Good morning, everyone. We are Group 2, and today we are going to present our topic, Enterprise Risk Management and the Role of the Internal Audit in the Management Risk. Our presentation focusing how Enterprise Risk Management, or ERM, helps organizations manage the risk, and how internal audits reported the process through the assurance, advisory services, and independence. The key methods of the presentation is simple. Management owns risk, while the internal audits provide assurance and advice. In this presentation, we will discuss four main areas. First, we will explain how the ERM is and why it is important for the organizations. ERM provides a structured and organizations-wide process to identify the assets, responses, to monitor and report the risk that may affect the organization's objectives. Second, we will explain the risk ownership. Management is responsible for owning and managing the risk, while the board and the audit committee provide the oversight. Third, we will discuss the role of the internal audit. Internal audit does not own the risk. Instead, it provides independent assurance and advisory services on the risk management, internal control, and governance. Finally, we will discuss the importance of the independence. Internal audits can add value to ERM, but it must avoid the taking over management responsibilities. Organizations today facing many types of the risk, this including the financial risk, operational risk, compliance risk, cybersecurity risk, fraud risk, reputation risk, and strategic risk. These risks are often connected. For example, a cybersecurity incident may not only affect the IT system, it can also create a financial loss, operational disruptions, legal problems, and reputational damage. Therefore, organizations need the ERM because risk cannot be managed separately by each department only. ERM help the organization look at the risk at the enterprise-wide level. In this way, ERM supported better decision-making, stronger internal control, and better governance.
Conceptual framing of enterprise risk management. First, let us understand the concept of enterprise risk management. So, according to the COSO definition, ERM is a process carried out by the board of directors, management, and the employees to identify the potential events that may affect the organization and manage risk within its risk appetite in order to achieve organizational objectives. There are three important concepts in ERM. The first one is ERM is organization-wide. This means ERM applies across all business units, departments, and all levels within an organization. Risk management is not limited to one department, so instead, every employee and manager has a role in identifying and managing the risk. The second one is the ERM is linked to the strategy. So risk management must support the organization's strategic goals. So when the management develops strategies and objectives, they must consider the risks and that may affect those plans. So risk appetite and risk tolerance are also determined according to the organization's strategic direction. And the third one is ERM is a continuous process. So risk management is not a one-time activity. The organization continuously identifies, assess, monitors, and report risks as business conditions change. This helps organizations respond quickly to a new challenge and opportunities. Now let's discuss the COSO ERM Framework 2017, which is one of the most widely used risk management framework globally. So the framework consists of 5 key components. The first one is the governance and culture. This component establishes oversight responsibilities and promotes ethical values, accountability, and a risk-aware culture throughout the organization. And management and employees must understand their responsibility in managing risk. The second one is strategy and objective setting. The risk management should be integrated into strategic planning. Organizations must consider risk when setting goals and developing business strategies. The third one is performance. At this stage, organizations identify and assess risks, evaluate their likelihood and impact, prioritize them, and determine appropriate responses. This helps management to focus on the most significant risks. And the fourth one is review and revision. For the organization must regularly review the effectiveness of their ERM process. So any weakness or change in the business environment should be addressed through continuous improvement. And the last one is information, communication, and reporting. Relevant risk information must be communicated effectively to the management, employees, and the stakeholder. So good communication ensures informed decision making. Next, we will look at the ERM process, which follows a continuous cycle. The step 1 is identify the risks. Organization first identify the risks that may affect their operation or objectives. For example, include financial risks, cyber threats, operational failures, and compliance risks. Step 2 is assess likelihood and impact. After identifying risks, organization evaluate how likely the risk is to occur and how severe the consequence would be. The step 3 is respond to risk. Management decide how to deal with the risk. Response may include avoiding, reducing, transferring, or accepting the risk. The step 4 is implement the controls. Appropriate controls and procedures are introduced to minimize the likelihood or impact of risk. And the step 5 is monitor the risk. Organization continuously monitor risk and evaluate whether the controls remain effective. And the last step is report to the management and the board. Risk information is communicated to management and the board to support decision making and oversight. The cycle then repeats continuously as new risks emerge and the business condition change. Internal audit role in ERM. Now let's discuss the important role of internal audit in enterprise risk management. Internal audit does not directly manage risk. Instead, it provides the independent assurance and advice to ensure risk management processes are functioning effectively. There are three main roles. The first one is the assurance role. Internal audits evaluate whether risks have been properly identified, risk assessments are accurate, controls are effective, risk response are appropriate, and monitoring activities are functioning effectively. This assurance helps management and the board gain confidence that risks are being managed appropriately. The second one is consulting role. Internal auditors may facilitate risk management workshops, provide advice on risk management practice, assist in developing risk management framework, and promote risk awareness among the employees. So their consulting roles help improve the organization overall risk management capability. And the third one is the independent evaluation. The internal auditors independently evaluates the governance process, risk management systems, and the internal controls. Because internal audit remains independent, its assessments are objective and reliable. The next one is the professional standards and guidance. The work of internal audit is guided by several professional standards. The first one is the IIA Global Internal Audit Standard. This standard requires the auditors to evaluate risk management process, assess governance effectiveness, review internal controls, and maintain independence and objectivity. The second one is the COSOERM framework. This framework provides guidance on risk identification, assessments, response, monitoring, and reporting. And the third one is the ISO 31000 risk management standard. ISO emphasizes key principles such as integration, structured approach, continuous improvement, stakeholder involvement, and the value creation and protection. Three lines model. Let's discuss the three-line model developed by the Institute of the Internal Auditors. This model clarifies the responsibility for risk management within an organization. So the first line is the management. Management owns and manages risk directly. They implement the controls, policies, and procedures and are responsible for day-to-day risk management activities. And the second line is the risk and compliance function. These functions support and monitor risk management activities. They provide the guidance, the oversight, and reporting to management, but do not own the risk. And for the third line is internal audit. Internal audit provide independent assurance and advisory service to management and the board. So internal auditors review the design and effectiveness of risk management process and internal controls. They typically report to the audit committee. A very important principle is that internal audit is not the risk owner. So the risk ownership always remain with the management. So internal audit must preserve its independence by providing the assurance and advice without directly managing or implementing the risk responses.
Okay, so here are major responsibility of ERM and governance. So first of all, we have board and audit committee. The board and audit committee provide overall oversight of ERM, where they set the organization's risk appetite, review major risks, approve risk strategies, and hold management accountable for effective risk management. So next, we look at management. So for management, they own and manage risk for ERM in daily operations. It identifies risk, implement control and risk response, and also report significant risk issues to the board. And then third here we look at risk or compliance function for ERM. So the risk and compliance function coordinate risk management activities, maintain registers, monitor risk exposure, and provide guidance on risk assessment and compliance requirements. And then last year, we also look at internal audit. For internal audit, they provide independent assurance on governance, risk management, and controls. It also evaluates whether the ERM framework is designed and operating effectively and report its finding to the audit committee. So actually, there's a lot of responsibility and roles for ERM. So this is just like a few that I have mentioned here. So together, these four groups create a clear governance structure. The board oversees, management manage, risk, compliance, coordinate, and internal audit independently will ensure that the effectiveness of ERM framework. Next, we look at extended assurance role of internal audit. Okay, so first of all, we have is to review ERM framework design. So it assess whether ERM framework is properly structured, aligned with organization objective, and consistent with CUSO ERM standard. Besides that, internal audit also verify that policies, procedure, and risk appetite statement are documented and approved. And then second is to evaluate risk identification and assessment. So internal auditor examine whether management is identifies risk comprehensively across all business unit and assess the methodology used to evaluate likelihood and impact. Beside it, internal audit also confirm risk register are current, complete, and linked to strategy objective. And then third here is test effectiveness of internal control. So internal audit perform control testing to determine whether risk responses and mitigating controls are operating effectively. And then they also identify control gaps, weaknesses, or failures, and it also report findings to management and the audit committee. Last but not least is review risk reporting and follow-up action. Internal auditor verify that risk reporting to the board and management is accurate, timely, and complete. Then they also follow up on corrective action from prior audits. Lastly, it will also confirm management has implemented agreed remediation plans. So next, we look at the issue in implementing ERM. There's a lot of issue in implementing ERM, but first of all, here is an overemphasis on reporting or the excesses focus on risk reporting and compliance activity. So many organizations treat ERM as a process of producing risk report and heat maps rather than using it to support strategic decision making and identify opportunities. So that's the first issue in implementing ERM. Then the second issue here is poor integration with decision making. So this issue of ERM is often not fully integrated into organization decision making, in which risk management may operate separately from strategic planning and investment decision, causing important risks and uncertainties to be overlooked. Then the third issue here is over-reliance on standardized processes. So organization may become too dependent on standardized frameworks such as ISO 3100. While this framework provide useful guidance, excessive reliance can reduce flexibility and make it difficult to respond to emerging risks and changing business conditions. That the last issue in implementing ERM is failure to recognize a risk interdependencies. So, common weakness in ERM is treating risk as a separate issue. In reality, risks are interconnected, and a problem in one area can trigger an additional risk across the organization. So, ignoring this relationship may increase the impact of major disruption. Then we look at current challenges related to the topic. So first challenge is increasing business complexity of the business environment. So globalization, technological changes, cybersecurity threats, and evolving regulation create new risks that organization must continuously monitor and manage. So this is just the first current challenges. And then the second challenges is about resources limitation. So budget constraint, insufficient staffing, and limited technology can reduce the effectiveness of risk management and internal audit activities. And then the third challenges is digital transformation, where digital transformation has increased risk related to cybersecurity, data privacy, and information governance. As a result, internal auditor need advanced technological skills, and organizations must continuously adapt to their risk management practices. Therefore, ERM and internal audit functions must remain flexible, where resources and technologically capable to effectively manage emerging risks.
Good days to all. So here comes to my part. As you can see, the internal audit does not only check and report problems, it also provides advice to management. For example, the internal audit may suggest better ways to assess risks, improve the internal controls, make the risk reporting clearly, or develop a risk-based audit plan. It may also highlight some new risks such as the cybersecurity risk, the fraud risk, and maybe the compliance risk. However, this does not mean the internal audit becomes a part of management. This is the key point of this section. The internal audit can give suggestions, but the management must take the final decision and take action. For example, if the internal audit finds that the cybersecurity controls is pretty weak, it can also recommend strong asset control or a better incident response process. But the management must decide what system to use and how much budget to spend and how to implement the control. So the advisory rule is very useful, but it has their limits. This is why we need to understand the boundary of internal control, of internal audits. This slide shows this boundary more clearly. The internal audit may reveal the ERM framework, assess the risk identification process, test the internal controls, advise on risk reporting, and report weakness to the audit committee. These activities are suitable because they support assurance and improvement. But the internal audit should not own or management risks. It should not set the risk appetite. It should not implement controls, and it should not make final risk decisions. The reason is pretty simple. Like if the internal audit that's the management's work, it may later need to audit their own work. Then its independence and objective will be affected. So therefore, the internal audits add value by assurance and advice, but not by replacing management. To make this idea clear, we use the banking industry as an example. The bank faces many important risks, but the role of internal audit is not to manage its risks directly. Instead, internal audit checks whether the controls and the reporting procedures are working well. For the credit risk, the internal audit does not approve loans. The loans approval is management's responsibility. The internal audit reveals whether the credit approval and the monitoring controls are proper. For cybersecurity risks, the internal audit does not operate the IT security system. It reviews access control and incident response to whether the bank can protect the customer and the financial data. For compliance risks, the internal audit checks whether the bank has a proper process to follow the laws, regulations, and the internal policies. For the fraud risk, the internal audit may reveal the segregation of duties and the whistleblowing channel. This helps the bank to reduce the chance to fraud and detect the problems earlier. For the operation risk, internal audit may test the SOPs, authorization procedures, and expansion the reportings. From this example, we can see the same idea again. The management owns the risk, while the internal audit reveals the control and give assurance. So this leads to the final points of my part: independence and objectivity. Independence means that the internal audit should be free from management influence. Objective means the internal audit should give a fair and unbiased opinion. If the internal audit takes too many management roles, there will be a conflict. For example, if the internal audit designs or implements a control, it may later audit the same control. This becomes to a self-review problem. But if the internal control set risk appetite, it may also affect the future risk assessments and audit planning. If internal controls report only to the management may pressure affect their final audit findings. Therefore, the safeguards are important. Internal audit should have clear rules boundaries, avoid operation responsibilities, and report functionally to the audit committee. To summarize my part, the internal audit can support ARM by giving the advice, reviewing controls, and reporting weakness. But it must not become to the risk owner. Its values comes from the independent, objectivity, and professional judgment. So after discussing the advisor roles, boundary practical application, and the independent issues, the next presenter will extend the critical challenges and recommendations.
Hi, I'm Afifa binti Aminuddin and my metric number is A205952. Today, I will be presenting about critical analysis in the SWOT. We got four, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So for our strength is leverage internal audit, deep institutional knowledge, and rigorous methodologies in the SWOT. Our weaknesses is blurs the line of objectivity when auditing previously advised processes. Our opportunities in the SWOT is shift internal audit from a reactive corporate policeman to a protective strategic planner. And our threats, lastly, is our threat high risk of regulator non compliance if independent is compromised. So in this slide, we got limitation, implication, and emerging concerns. So on the left side, we got the resources constraints, which is our limitations. Internal audit functions often lack the specialized bandwidth to handle both intensive ERM, advisory, and mandatory assurance workloads. Next is blinded governance, which is our implications. If internal audit loses independence through operational proximity, the board is left without an unbiased lens, severely blinding corporate governance. On the right side, both is emerging concerns, where the first one is the velocity of modern risks, rapidly evolving threats like AI governance and cybersecurity pressures management to rely too heavily on internal audit for implementations, severely testing independence boundaries. Next is psychological confirmation bias, where auditors are naturally less likely to report flaws or control failures in an ERM framework that they personally helps design.
So here comes to the Q&A session. If you have any questions or you want to start a discussion, you are welcome to ask any questions just in our group. So that's all for our group. Thanks for your listening.